Right now, sitting in a warehouse in Addis Ababa, there are 48 million burrs worth of chickpeas going absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, the buyer is ready, the seller is ready, but because of a drone strike thousands of miles away in the Middle East, that whole transaction is it's completely frozen.
Right. It's a textbook cascading systemic shock.
Yeah.
You build a business model, assuming the shipping lanes are open, the fuel is flowing, the banking lines are clear. And when those assumptions shatter, well, you realize just how exposed you are to global conflicts that you have zero control over.
It's wild. Welcome, everyone, to a very special deep dive. Today, we bring you straight into the newsroom of Addis Fortune, which is Ethiopia's largest English weekly newspaper. Our mission for this session is to really unpack the most vital stories from this week's edition.
Exactly.
We want to understand how these global shock waves and, well, massive internal reforms are reshaping Ethiopia's economy and society right now. I am thrilled to be your guide through this incredible stack of reporting today.
And my role today is to help us look past those immediate headlines. We're going to connect the dots across these Addis Fortune articles and, really explain why these massive shifts actually matter to you.
We have a truly fascinating stack of sources to get through. We'll be looking at how a war thousands of miles away is stranding agricultural shipments and, amazingly, grounding airplane engines.
Yeah, that one is huge.
We'll also examine why the country's public universities are being put to a massive high-stakes governance test. Plus, we've got a housing scheme that landed in court and a really controversial shakeup in the insurance boardroom. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the skies, and specifically Ethiopian Airlines.
Right. So as Africa's largest carrier, their operational blueprint is, it's a prime example of global dependency. For years now, Ethiopian Airlines has relied heavily on massive original equipment manufacturers.
Right, companies like Rolls-Royce and GE Aerospace, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Honeywell. But the vulnerability really lies in the geography of their supply chain. They centralize a lot of their spare parts and their repair operations in hubs outside of Africa, particularly, places like Dubai.
Wow, okay. So now, because of the conflict involving Iran, Israel, and the United States, those traditional shipping corridors in the Middle East have been severely disrupted.
Yeah, totally bottlenecked.
Right. Sending a massive engine or specialized aviation parts to Dubai for maintenance has suddenly become incredibly expensive and agonizingly slow. I mean, think about it like this. It's like having to send your car to another continent just for an oil change. But suddenly, the highway you use to get there is an active war zone.
That's a great way to put it. And to understand the financial pressure this creates, you really have to look at the anatomy of an airline's balance sheet.
Okay.
Fuel is naturally their largest expense, taking up about 40 to 45% of their total operating costs. But right behind that is aircraft maintenance, which sits at roughly 10 to 15%. So when your profit margins are built on that exact cost structure, prolonged logistical disruptions, they aren't just an inconvenience. They are an existential threat to profitability.
Yeah, and the fragility of that supply chain is just wild. The sources point out that 3 vessels bound for Ethiopia carrying 120,000 tons of diesel and 60,000 tons of jet fuel were just left stranded in the Arabian Gulf.
Stranded?
Yeah, because the waters were just too dangerous to navigate. So in response, CEO Mesfin Tissot is accelerating plans to build deeper maintenance, repair, and overhaul bases right at home in Ethiopia.
Right, bringing it domestic.
Exactly. They have a $100 million joint venture with ASCII Airlines for a new facility expected next year, and a massive expansion plan for a hub at Bishoftu International Airport.
And I have to push back here.
Okay, go ahead.
The Bishoftu facility is expected to open around 2030. Is that really fast enough? If you have millions of gallons of jet fuel stranded in the Gulf right now, waiting 6 years for a new hub feels like an eternity. Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, building aviation infrastructure of this magnitude isn't just about weathering today's geopolitical storm,
Right.
It's about capturing a massive underserved market. The African aviation maintenance market is booming right now. It's valued at around $1.6 billion for 2025, and it's expected to exceed $2 billion within 5 years.
Oh, wow, $2 billion.
Yeah. And currently, a vast majority of that revenue just leaks right out of the continent to Europe and the Middle East, mostly because those hubs have the specialized repair slots. They can handle a wider variety of aircraft types.
I see. So by bringing it in-house, they aren't just saving their own fleet. They are setting themselves up to be basically the mechanic for the rest of the continent.
Exactly. Aviation expert Yonatan Menkira makes a really crucial point in the reporting about this strategy. The true value of Ethiopian Airlines expanding its in-house capacity isn't just the third-party revenue they bring in from fixing other airlines' planes.
Though they already earn over $110 million doing that, right?
Right, which is huge. But the real secret weapon is opportunity cost savings.
Oh, okay.
By doing the maintenance in-house with salaried staff and co-located facilities, they aren't paying premium market rates for outsourced work. And more importantly, they don't have to wait in line for repair slots in Dubai or Europe.
Which saves time, which saves money.
Exactly. Menkir argues that to survive these kinds of bottlenecks, Africa must be viewed as a single ecosystem, utilizing short-term cross-border partnerships to share idle hangars.
Right. Now, while the multi-million-dollar airplane parts make the headlines, the ripple effects of this supply chain freeze are hitting local wallets and farms with brutal speed.
Yeah.
I mean, businesses are practically begging the government to be more flexible just to survive these global shocks.
Yeah, the local impact is devastating.
Let's look at Binyam Tekle, who's the founder of Basin Plow. He spent nearly a decade building trust with buyers in the Middle East. This season, he secured 20 containers of chickpeas.
That's the 48 million birr worth of cargo sitting in a warehouse in Quality we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. He intended to ship them to the UAE, India, and Iran. But when the region erupted, his Iranian buyers halted everything. His capital is completely tied up in a warehouse, generating zero return.
And you see the exact same systemic failure at the VegPro flower farm.
Right.
They export 2 million kilograms of flowers to Europe annually. Suddenly, their shipments of essential fertilizer from the Middle East are discontinued. Because logistics companies had to reroute ships around the conflict zones, the cost to ship 1 kilogram of flowers jumped from $1.90 to $2.40.
Whoa.
Yeah, in just a matter of days. That destroys any pre-calculated profit margin.
And that is assuming they can even physically get the flowers to the airport. The farm manager there, Mahendra Patel, detailed how acquiring the diesel fuel needed just to drive the delivery trucks on the rural roads from Bishoftu and Waliso has become extremely difficult.
Because of the national shortage.
Right. Ethiopia is entirely dependent on imported fuel. When the partial closure of the Strait of Hormuz stranded thousands of vessels, the government's long-term fuel contracts broke down. So they had to scramble to buy fuel on the open market.
And the mechanics of that shift are punishing.
How so?
Well, usually a country relies on annual tenders. It's essentially a massive pre-negotiated contract that locks in a predictable price and a steady delivery schedule for an entire year. It provides stability.
Just what you want.
Right. But when those deliveries failed to arrive, the government was forced onto the spot market. The spot market means buying commodities right now at whatever the current floating global price happens to be.
Right. And those emergency procurements pushed diesel to $93 a barrel. The government's fuel subsidy burden surged past 272 billion birrs as a result. We are seeing lines of taxis and buses stretching for over 2 kilometers in Addis Ababa, with drivers literally sleeping in their vehicles overnight just to get a tank of gas.
It's a nightmare for the daily commuter.
It is. But here's where it gets really interesting. If you look at the macro numbers, the government is sort of taking a victory lap. Yet on the ground, logistics managers are drowning. The Minister of Trade and Regional Integration, Dr. Kasahun Gofe, stood before Parliament praising the country's quote-unquote unprecedented export performance.
Not precedent.
Yeah, claiming they generated $6.7 billion in 8 months.
The juxtaposition there is striking. While the macro numbers project triumph, the micro-reality is total gridlock. Take Tuadros Kibedi from World Global Transit and Logistics.
Okay.
He has a client with 44 containers of marble stuck at dry ports. And think of a dry port like an inland staging ground. It's supposed to be a temporary waiting room where cargo is cleared by customs before it hits the ocean.
Just a pit stop.
Right. But right now, because commercial ships are entirely avoiding the nearby port of Djibouti due to the Red Sea threats, these dry ports are turning into permanent parking lots.
Which creates this massive paradox. The external environment is demanding immense flexibility from Ethiopian businesses, and those businesses are desperate for structural reform to help them absorb these global supply shocks.
Yeah.
But, ironically, when we look at the government's domestic agenda, they are demanding that public institutions figure out how to survive on their own. And nowhere is that friction more obvious than in the Ministry of Education's new directive for public universities.
This is a fascinating shift in institutional governance. The Ministry of Education issued a directive stating that the country's public universities can finally graduate to autonomous governance.
And there are a lot of them, right?
Over 45 public universities in Ethiopia, serving more than 1 million students. Up until now, they have been heavily managed from the top down.
Right.
Under the new rules, they can run themselves, but only if they score 60% on a highly rigorous readiness framework.
So they are tested on administration, human resources, finance, and academics. And it's a double evaluation process, right, to prevent universities from just, giving themselves a passing grade.
Exactly. First, the university's management evaluates themselves. Then, an independent committee of staff from outside the management structure assesses them, and only then does the final report go to the board.
Okay.
Jimma University and Bahir Dar University are already actively preparing for this transition. However, Dr. Solomon Ibraha from the ministry insists that autonomy does not equal privatization. They will remain public institutions.
So the intention is conditional independence. The ministry wants to loosen bureaucratic control without sacrificing academic standards or financial oversight. I understand the intention, but let's look at the mechanics of this because it feels fundamentally flawed.
How do you mean?
Well, it's like telling a teenager they can finally move out, but only if they pass a massive corporate financial audit. I mean, it's like being handed the steering wheel of a car, but the government still controls the gas pedal and the brakes.
I see what you're getting at.
Take the human resources side. Teklu Tefesis from Jimma University raised a massive red flag. How can a university be truly autonomous if their HR department is still entirely chained to the rigid federal civil service framework?
That's a very fair point.
Right. If you don't have the authority to hire the talent you need, offer competitive salaries, or even restructure your staff without federal approval, you aren't actually driving the car.
That is the exact friction point. Administrative autonomy is just a hollow concept if you lack operational leverage. But what's fascinating here is the deeper skepticism coming from academic researchers like Dr. Belain Atay.
What's his take on it?
He argues that the ministry's ambitions are completely outpacing the system's actual infrastructural capacity. Checking boxes on an administrative readiness form doesn't fix the underlying systemic rot.
Well, he points out that universities are still dealing with non-accredited laboratories and completely outdated curricula.
Yes, and more crucially, he focuses on digital transformation. Currently, Ethiopian public universities rely on paper-based systems for critical functions, like grant administration.
Wait, paper-based?
Yes. It is slow, it's opaque, and it is highly prone to error. Dr. Tay argues that true autonomy requires a functioning digital ecosystem, unified platforms for research tracking, and real-time financial data systems.
Because otherwise you're flying blind.
Exactly. If you simply declare a university autonomous without installing those digital tools, you just have academic staff acting as amateur administrators without the bandwidth or the training to actually govern.
Yeah, as he puts it, autonomy only works if the system behind it works. The whole point of this university directive is to ensure these institutions have the governance capacity to protect their students' futures.
Right.
But it makes me wonder, what happens when an institution completely lacks governance? What happens when the compliance frameworks fail and the safety nets designed to protect everyday people just, legally evaporate?
That takes us directly to the Quirkos division of the Federal First Instance Court and the collapse of a highly publicized housing scheme.
Man, this is a heartbreaking story from the Fortune pages. We are talking about a massive financial unraveling here. Currently, 32 plaintiffs are suing Key Housing Finance Solutions and Bunna Insurance for over 8 million birr. And this is actually the second wave of lawsuits.
Yeah, there was a prior suit.
Right, involving 236 buyers claiming 29 million birr in losses.
The premise of the scheme was designed to appeal to the deep demand for affordable living. Key Housing promised to build 100,000 homes in 10 years for low and middle income residents. The mechanics worked like a savings fund. Buyers signed 30-year contracts and made consistent monthly contributions to secure their future homes.
And to make people feel safe handing over their life savings, buyers paid extra to purchase performance guarantee bonds from Bunna Insurance. Let's define what that is for a second.
Go for it.
A performance bond is essentially a financial promise. If the contractor fails to deliver the promised project, in this case the houses, the insurance company steps in and pays the buyers back. The whole pitch was, your investment is safe. Even if the housing project fails, the insurance company has your back.
That was the promise.
But when the project started to collapse, Bunna Insurance unilaterally withdrew the coverage. So what does this all mean? How is it legally or functionally possible for an insurance company to just unilaterally withdraw a performance guarantee that buyers explicitly paid for?
Well, the plaintiffs are arguing that this withdrawal represents a material breach of contract. However, the internal mechanics of the failure explain how the insurance company might justify stepping away. The lawsuit alleges this operation was an illegal pyramid-style scheme.
A pyramid scheme?
Yes, where money flowing in from new members was simply being used to pay off construction obligations to older members. Furthermore, Key Housing's promotional materials promised fully completed homes, but what they actually delivered via this randomized lottery system were incomplete block-level structures without any finishing work or basic infrastructure.
So the real aha moment here isn't just that a pyramid scheme collapsed. It's the realization of what happens when a company operates even 1 inch outside its regulatory mandate.
Exactly.
The plaintiffs claim Key Housing was engaging in real estate activities, like land leasing and construction, without the proper legal licenses. If a company is not legally authorized to do what it is doing, the foundational contract that the performance bond is based on can just be deemed invalid.
Right. The risk profile changes so drastically that the insurer legally bails out.
Which is terrifying. When compliance fails, consumer protection doesn't just bend, it ceases to exist.
And you can see the internal breakdown validating that exact point. Jeremy Sefa, who held a 20% stake and served as the deputy general manager of Key Housing, actually resigned over this.
Really?
Yeah, he cited unresolved concerns over transparency and heavily opposed the company's strategy of using members' monthly contributions as collateral. When you operate outside your licensed mandate and your internal executives are fleeing because of transparency issues, the insurance safety net just evaporates.
It's gone.
And that dynamic destroys not just individual savings, but broader market trust.
Absolutely. It takes years to build market trust, and only a single high-profile collapse to completely shatter it. This catastrophic breakdown in executive accountability is, honestly, the perfect lens through which to view our final story today.
Yes.
Regulators are officially panicked about unqualified leadership taking on massive public risk. And the central bank is stepping in with a heavy hand to force discipline into the boardroom.
The National Bank of Ethiopia, or NBE, has issued a sweeping new directive for the insurance industry. It is arguably the most aggressive push for corporate governance we've seen in the financial sector recently. They are drastically raising the barrier to entry for leadership positions.
Right. Under the new rules, anyone stepping into a CEO role at an insurance firm now needs 12 years of industry experience, and at least 5 of those years have to be spent at a senior executive level.
Plus the age requirements.
Right. Board directors must be at least 30 years old.
Yeah.
And for the first time ever, companies are required to have independent directors on their boards. They are also cracking down on the use of temporary leadership to bypass these rules, capping acting CEOs at serving just 6 to 9 months.
Now, the central bank's motivation becomes clear when you look at the market context.
Okay.
The entire insurance industry's contribution to Ethiopia's GDP recently fell to an abysmal 1.5%. The market concentration is highly skewed, with the state-owned Ethiopian Insurance Corporation dominating with nearly 45% of all business.
Wow, 45%.
Yeah, and private players are floundering. The regulators look at this landscape and conclude that the sector is fragile due to a distinct lack of seasoned, highly experienced leadership.
The private industry, however, is pushing back hard on this. They argue that this directive shrinks an already dangerously shallow talent pool. I mean, it is like requiring a PhD just to apply for a junior management role.
Yeah, you could empty out the applicant pool entirely.
Exactly. You want higher quality, but you might just shoot yourself in the foot. Imagine being a bright young innovator in the insurance space, perhaps with a cutting-edge background in IT or digital marketing. Under this new directive, you now face a rigid 12-year roadblock just to reach the top.
This raises an important question about the delicate balance regulators must strike. How do you mandate long-term sustainability and risk management without suffocating immediate innovation and growth?
That's the million-dollar question.
The industry's primary argument is that the NBE is favoring old-school operational experience while entirely ignoring the modern skills that insurers actually need to survive today, such as, digital transformation, data analytics, and strategic marketing.
Yeah, but yet, considering the complete collapse of governance in the Key Housing scheme we just unpacked, you can entirely understand the central bank's desire to install the adults in the room.
Definitely. Asejid Jibramedin, a veteran insurance expert cited in the reporting, captures that tension perfectly. He argues that this level of strict discipline is long overdue.
Right.
Expertise in risk and compliance is absolutely essential if insurers are going to survive beyond short-term profit chasing. But even he warns that the regulator might be punishing operational talent by forcing everyone into a rigid, one-size-fits-all box.
Interesting.
He's urging the regulators to judge existing executives on their actual merit and performance so that capable leaders aren't simply frustrated right out of the industry.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, looking at all the Addis fortune stories we've covered today, the overarching narrative is pretty clear. Ethiopia is undergoing a massive, multi-front stress test.
It really is.
We have Ethiopian Airlines being forced to rethink its entire global supply chain and internalize its maintenance because of a geopolitical conflict. We have local businesses, from chickpea exporters to flower farms, fighting to survive spot market fuel prices and shipping bottlenecks.
And then the internal pressures.
Exactly. On the domestic front, the government is demanding stricter governance. They're forcing universities to prove their administrative capacity to gain autonomy, and they're compelling insurance boards to age up and experience up to restore market trust.
We often navigate our daily lives assuming the systems around us are permanent and perfectly stable. But today, we saw how a drone strike in the Middle East can halt a chickpea shipment in an Addis Ababa warehouse, and how a company operating outside its mandate can cause an insurance bond to just vanish, ruining a family's dream of homeownership. It leaves you with a critical question to consider. What are the invisible dependencies in your own life, your career, or your business that you only notice when they suddenly break?
That is a phenomenal thought to leave on. When that neat little box of the global economy gets blown open, you realize just how connected every single gear truly is. Thank you so much for joining us in the Addis Fortune Newsroom for this deep dive. Make sure you pick up the weekly edition of the newspaper for more of this incredible reporting. Stay curious, keep connecting the dots, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.